Hello, monsters, and welcome, to my basement that you appear to have fallen into. Today we're going to explain the wacky world of Undertale. Well, explain, solve, kind of hard to say. You see, unlike the other games where where there's a story, Undertale has a story, but the problem is not Undertale is a role-playing game, so the blanks left in the story are more something that you, the player, can kind of fill in for yourself. You kind of get to decide the middle ground, but I'm here to explain my solutions to the middle ground and more specifically support them with evidence to try and prove that they are at least somewhat canon to the game. But, again, role playing game, so some of it is left to personal interpretation, of course. Okay, let's start with the easy one. Okay, at the start of the game, we're told that human wizards sealed monsters underground. How did they do this, you may be wondering? Well, ultimately, I think it comes down to boss monsters, right? Boss monsters are monsters which creatures whose souls are made purely of magic, and whose bodies are also made purely of magic. Boss monsters hold more determination than most monsters, and this allows them to do things like in Asgore's battle. If you tell him that he's already killed you, he'll nod sadly, right? Like they have some amount of knowledge about about timelines and stuff. Things that we know, it is determination that allows you to mess with timelines. Um, so like I have seen theories that like the artifact that the annoying dog stops you getting um is how they locked monsters underground. I don't think so. I mean, it could be. Here's the thing: it could be because the artifact could honestly do anything. It's an old artifact that you know we have nothing to go off of with it. But we see like the wizards are holding staffs, and the staffs don't really look like they have like the orbs on the end. They aren't holding orbs. But also, and I think more interestingly, is just consider monsters are made of magic, human souls are made of determination, and bodies are made of physical matter. But if monsters have boss monsters which can hold more determination, then I think it would just stand to reason that the human wizards are, for all intents and purposes, boss humans. Humans whose souls have a little bit of, have more magic in them, who can utilize magic, right? I mean, to me, it stands to reason that that's how that would work. So that's a nice, easy little solution. Let's also talk about the statue, because I'm trying to go through smaller things and then work my way up to bigger things. Yeah, the statue in Waterfall, the one that plays his theme. Everyone assumes it's a statue of Azrael, but it isn't. I've looked at the horns of that statue. I remember distinctly that the horns I don't think line up with anyone. So there's the horns of the king so there are multiple boss monsters. Uh, to our knowledge, boss monsters are only goats, but they may not be, because Rudy himself may be a boss monster, because I believe Asgore says that they met in college, which would indicate that they're as old as each other, and Rudy doesn't die till he has kids, so Rudy's probably a boss monster. That would also explain Noelle's incredible powerful magic. Like, you would assume. Therefore, the timeline alone makes me think, like, if they met in college, and Asgore is, incredibly old, and hasn't died because his son did, and Rudy has had kids and died, it would stand to reason that boss monsters can. And then there are people like Gerson. Is he long living because he's a turtle monster, or is he a boss monster? I mean, he was known as the Hammer of Justice in the Monster and Human War. It doesn't exactly sound like he's, it seems like he's lived for quite a long time. Um, Yeah, considering the weaponry that we see is, I mean, the weaponry we see is like medieval. We know Kara comes, um, or Chara comes at, like 2001X, so somewhere between 2010 2019, and then a bunch of other humans have to fall down, and then obviously Frisk does. So it seems like it's been hundreds of years. Feel and like Hammer of Justice to have survived the human monster war if you were actively in combat all the time, and we know how powerful humans are. Yeah, kind of feels like Gerson would also kind of have to be a boss monster, if it would stand to reason. And maybe there are some other people who are boss monsters, one who we'll get to later. But though, so it does seem like boss monsters can take more forms than just the goat monsters, which may also mean that goat monsters aren't necessarily all boss monsters, but we can't be entirely sure. I also think it's fun that goats, the horns, the trident, regularly associated with the devil, and like in the Undertale universe, it's likely the stories of the devil were probably concocted by people who saw, like boss monsters like Asgore. It's unclear if boss monsters species, like boss monsters may just come in multiple species. The question is, do those species have non-boss monster versions? Like, are there reindeers who aren't boss monsters? Are there goats who aren't boss monsters? Unclear. It's hard to say. This also would put more evidence. This would also put more evidence on the theory that Alvin. I mean, this is Deltarune, and I'm not doing Deltarune lore today, but I will just say this adds evidence to the theory that Alvin is the knight. Because monsters don't have determination. They should not be able to open fountains. So, and that might be different, because Deltarune seems to have a different lore. But if that lore does carry over, then only a boss monster would be able to make fountains. Which again, Noelle almost certainly is, because her dad would have to be to have gone to college with Asgore. And also, um, yeah. And also then Gerson would probably have had to have been alive for that long. Because also, monsters, like, their bodies take numerous forms, their lifespans shouldn't, because they're magical, their lifespans shouldn't be dictated by the species. He's just a monster who happens to look like a tortoise, so it doesn't necessarily make sense that he would have a comparative lifespan of one. Kind of like how skeletons aren't actual skeletons, they're monsters who look like human skeletons, and so on. So in theory, all monster lifespans should be the same anyway, which means if Gerson's been alive since the Human Monster War, he's definitely a boss monster. And, he's dead in Deltarune, where he has a kid. So, well, that furthers the evidence. Like, if the one difference is that he had a kid on the surface, then that then yeah, I guess he would be a boss monster, assuming that the rules of the world stay consistent. Which, to my knowledge, the only real evidence is that Susie claims everyone bleeds, which could just be an expression. It doesn't mean it's literal necessarily. And also, a little girl asks, like, what does it feel like to be made out of blood? And there's also Noelle. This is one that people don't mention often. But, oh my god, why am I talking about Deltarune? Okay, quickly, just. It's important to the lore of Undertale, because Deltarune gives us more evidence to it if the rules are the same. Which, it does appear like the next chapters of Deltarune will have books that explain how human souls work, which could be nice. But anyway, just quickly. Noelle is also pranked by Chris, who puts like ketchup on himself and tells her it's blood, and like it scares her, and she's scared of like humans under the bed. So it does seem like from two pieces of dialogue that like yeah, monsters don't bleed in Deltarune either, which therefore disproves the idea that they are made of physical matter and don't have access to magic. They could very well have access to magic and just simply don't use it for fear of scaring the humans or for fear of any number of things, honestly. or even just for the convenience. Like, magic, remember, they're made of magic. It probably takes substantial effort to generate magic. Like, underground, like, Toriel has an oven, she just doesn't use it in Undertale. I wouldn't be surprised if monsters use magic in Undertale because they were trapped underground. Their technology seems to be lagging far behind ours, which means that human technology in Undertale, like, because it's probably in the future, and if monsters are at a point where they can make things like, Metaton's body, even though he's not a sentient robot, like, Metaton's body is still advanced, and, they've got things like the internet, then it would stand to reason that human society is probably quite far ahead of even that, because they're just using, like, the scraps of trash that have sent down to the underground from the waterfall. Anyway, the reason why I bring all this up is simply to say that boss monsters may not necessarily always take goat forms, which could mean not all goat monsters are boss monsters, but we don't have any evidence for that. It could be that boss monsters have numerous species, but, like, still exclusive species that are only ever boss monsters. We just don't know. Oh, and that Noel being able to create dark fountains wouldn't necessarily contradict the idea that monsters are the same in Deltarune, because actually Noel would be a boss monster and therefore would have determination. We also know that monsters just can have also, we never actually see her make a fountain, so, like, Queen could have just been wrong. And also, like, Undyne is able to hold vast amounts of determination to the point it melts her, which proves she's not a boss monster, because a boss monster wouldn't melt because of their determination, because their bodies and souls are designed to hold it. But she does manage to, like, reform herself in the genocide route. So, definitely not, like, monsters definitely can hold determination. It just, like, causes them harm, and it seems like they have to reach a certain level to be able to do what Undyne did. And even then, that's because she's standing up against, like, our evil. Point is, in Waterfall, there's a statue, and its horns, the shape of its horns don't appear to match any sprite. Right? Like, Asgore's horns appear different in his battle versus in the opening section, which could mean that Asgore was a different boss monster to the one with the trident who we see. Probably his son. I will say that before, because I've heard people say, like, before, that, like, oh, Asgore could have, they could have had a different king in Ruin, so Asgore could be much younger, so Rudy could still be within a human, within a normal boss, within a normal monster time span. No, 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 no. Because they're like, our king is bad at naming things, home. Our king is bad at naming things, new home. They don't say our new king is as bad as naming things as the old one. They just say our king. I think they say, like, our king is still bad at naming things, or something to that effect. So so actually, no, like, it does seem like it's one consistent king from Ruins to New Home, right? Because otherwise they would say, like, our new king is just as bad as naming things as our old one, or something like that. Doesn't, so probably was just Asgore the whole time. Maybe what we're seeing in the opening the opening cutscene is, like, the opening cutscene. I wouldn't be surprised if it's, like, the first thing they made. So the fact that the sprites don't necessarily line up, like, it maybe doesn't mean anything. Even if it does mean something, right? And you, like, because that's, you don't want to write off details. It could just mean that the previous king was killed and then Asgore surrendered, or even that king surrendered, but maybe died soon after. I mean, if he had a son, he would have, right? Like, it doesn't. Either way, yeah, Asgore was probably king from at least Ruins, like the construction of the Ruins back when they weren't the Ruins, to New Home. He just appears to have been king the whole time. They never mention a previous king or anything like that. I think even Gerson might have a line where, like, Gerson would know the previous king from the Human Monster War anyway, and he doesn't give any indication that that king came down to the underground or anything like that. Anyway, yeah, point is, in Ruins, I believe the statue's horn shape, and like, the shape of the horns on the statue, sorry, not in Ruins, in Waterfall, doesn't line up with any monster we've seen. waterfall statue boss. Oh, Undertale, there it is. Okay. Undertale. Yeah, its horns are on the side of its head and go up, whereas in, like, interestingly, in all the various sprites, about, yeah, Asriel, all of his horns, I mean, he doesn't have horns as a kid, but when he's in his boss monster mode, his horns go down, and then when he becomes the god of hyperdeath, his horns are, like, wavy, which don't line up with the statue. Um, the statue's horns go up, remember that. Asgore's horns have a slight curve in them and do go up, but aren't on the side of his head. It's like it's not the same shape because they're curved. The whole horns just kind of go like out and then up, both in his sprite and battle. And then Toriel, I believe, kind of just has. I think hers are on the front of her head. Yeah, Toriel's are on the front of her head and kind of curl. They aren't on the side. So none of these. It is interesting actually that Asriel's horns seem to, like, they're on the side of his head and they curve sideways, which seems almost like a fusion of Asgore and Toriel's. That's cool. That's actually really cool from a genetic perspective. But the fact that, like, in his kid form he doesn't even have horns, yeah, the idea that the statue in Waterfall is a statue of Asriel is just not true. Oh, also back to, yeah, okay, and it's not Toriel or Asgore either because the horns don't line up. Which means that this is just a fourth boss monster who is out there somewhere, was out there somewhere, I believe even in the opening. Um, I'm so organized. It's just. Yeah, here we go. In the opening, the horns. Do those horns not match Asgore? Hang on. Hang on. Asgore. I mean. Honestly, they kind of do match Asgore. I don't know. Oh no, one of the horns is broken. Okay, never mind. No, it's not Asgore. The horns are very similar, which just bolster. It definitely is Dad. One of the horns is broken. That's cool, actually. I never realized that. I think maybe there is a little bit more of a curve to the end as well, or it goes up. But it definitely doesn't match the statue, which means that, like, there are 5 boss monster characters who we don't. Well, 5 technically. There are 4. You've got Asgore's dad, Asgore, Toriel, Asriel. Where's the. And then the 5th one would be the statue, right? So. That would mean. The question: who is this? Who is this other boss monster? Yeah, I'm just checking yeah, Toriel's battle. Yeah, exactly the same. Overworld sprite, exactly the same. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hang on. I'm just making sure. Okay, yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, no, none of their horns match, which means that, because what would that mean? The waterfall statue is of a different boss monster who doesn't appear. It seems as if the genetic relation of horns is that it's a fusion. It might work like quirks in My Hero Academia, where it's literally like it's you either get one of your parents' horns or you get a fusion. I guess he could just be a random genetic mutation of horns. It does seem as if his horns are completely genetic, which could mean he's from a different family, or she, I guess, or they technically. But we never see another boss monster. I guess that doesn't mean. This is why I thought it would be important to point out, are there non-boss monster variants of boss monsters? I think there are reindeer monsters in Snowdin. I would highly doubt that they are boss monsters. So, in that way, I would even. So, I guess, yeah, their non boss monster variants must exist. Because. Okay. Right. Okay, that helps. Because I highly doubt the random reindeer background character is a boss monster in Snowden. Okay. So this could be a non-boss monster, because to our knowledge, the only boss monster goats are the Dreamer family. So, let's put this together then. There's another, not necessarily a boss monster, another goat monster running around. But then why would he have a statue? And why would his theme match Azrael's? No, they have to be a boss monster then. Also, I believe the reindeers might not be the same type of reindeer as Rudy. They might be different in design, so it may not necessarily mean anything. To be connected to Azrael, they would have to be a boss monster. Probably a family member. Because of his theme, right? And why else would you have a statue? A, broken down statue, so it's been a while. I guess. And it opens you to the ancient artifact. Okay, so this is a very old boss monster who no longer exists. Then I guess we know that Asgore has been around. Asgore and Toriel have been around. Well, Asgore at least, but I would assume Toriel as well. Have been around since at least the times of Home. So, or really since monsters have been cast down here. So, the idea of this being an ancient artifact, we know. Yeah, we know that Karo was sent down here. I mean, we know it's been at least hundreds of years, right? From medieval weaponry to 2000 and somewhere between 2010 and 2019. So I guess in that way, we know it's been hundreds of years. So I guess the artifact would be ancient anyway. So this is probably some. Okay. Let's put this together. It has to be. It has to be another kid, surely. Why else the connection to Azrael? Right, I would be willing to say there's another boss monster family that we just never see, or that it's not a boss monster, but the connection to Azrael, specifically through his theme, is way too big a connection. And it is ancient. We don't know how long it's been between Kara arriving here and Frisk arriving here, right? But it just would have to be. We don't know how long that's been, so we can't say whether if this statue was created at Azrael's time, it would have been ancient. But we know if it was created before Azrael, it definitely would have been. So, a boss monster gets a statue makes me feel like it's a memorial, right? There are two reasons you have a statue. Either you're famous, you do something great, you get a statue erected in your name for that, or it's a memorial. The statue does not appear, and the statue hides the secret to the ancient artifact. So, and when you give it an umbrella specifically, that almost makes it feel sentient. Because you give it an umbrella, the code appears, it plays a song, which the code, I mean, it's probably for you, the player, but it plays a song, you copy the song, you open the artifact. So it's designed to protect the artifact. The statue itself seems to be in a very sad pose, but that could just be because it's decrepit. And you have to give it an umbrella, so it's getting dripped on. It feels like more of a memoriam, you know? The statue, even when it was fixed, was probably more of a sad-looking statue. It's less of a triumphant, if it was triumphant, you'd be holding, a weapon, you'd be arm up, big, pushing out, you'd be on a pedestal. That makes it feel like a more of a memoriam statue. And with the connection to Azrael, but knowing that it can't be a statue of Azrael, because it seems to be bigger than Azrael ever would have been, it seems to have horns that Azrael just wouldn't have had. Could it be a Dreamer family member? Could Azrael and Toriel have had another kid at some point that died, maybe because of the artifact? I mean, the annoying dog stops you getting the artifact, which feels substantial, especially for reasons we'll get into later. So, maybe there is something there. Or maybe the artifact turned them into a statue, perhaps? Maybe they turned themselves into a statue to protect monster kind from some great threat? I mean, honestly, the idea that two Dreamer kids have somehow turned into, non-human, non-monster sentient, inanimate objects, in Flowey and then the statue. I mean, I guess. I mean, I guess. What would this be? Torgor? To me, that feels like the only. The fact that his theme comes up with Asriel, right? That feels like the best explanation. The horns don't necessarily line up, but we don't know that the horns have to line up. We just know if the horns don't line up to another character, then it can't be them. So, okay, that's what I'm going to say. After this long think, I've come down to it probably as a boss monster. It feels like it would have to be a child of Asriel and Toriel's because of his theme, because of the memoriam. And if it's protecting the artifact, it feels like it's maybe a self-sacrifice thing. We don't know what the artifact can do. Maybe this is giving us a bit of a hint. I'm down for that. I like that. Okay, that's my solution here. The artifact was dangerous. Maybe some great villain of times gone had it. We know that there were monsters who absorbed human souls at some point. So not all monsters are good and fighting in the name of justice. The idea that at some point soon after monsters moved into Waterfall, there could have been some tyrant who took control, and that Asgor's son could have risen to defend his people, potentially getting turned to stone or killed, and then it was locked behind the statue in order to make sure that no one could ever acquire such a power again. I like that. And we know that if a boss monster's child dies, they stop aging. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I think that works. Would it work with Deltarune? I mean, but maybe in Deltarune they just don't have a son as early. So maybe Asriel's just... Or he somehow dies anyway. Interesting. It's also interesting that Flowey never seems to have gotten his hands on the artifact, which means we don't know what it does, but it feels like Flowey would have wanted his hands on some ancient artifact that does something, right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's the statue, which I think is one of the biggest mysteries that's not talked about enough. Anyway, on to the good stuff, onto the juicy stuff. Are you or Kara evil? Yeah, this is a rough one, Chief, because on the one hand, you have Kara, who's, seems evil, I mean, even if you say no in the genocide route, they still destroy all of everything, and she is arguably the catalyst for everything that went wrong, ever, in the Underworld. I mean, it was Underworld? Is that what it's called? The Underground, there it is. Everything that went wrong in the Underground, I mean, it was her death and Asriel absorbing her soul and her letting Asriel carry her body, which is completely ridiculous because she would have known that how humans would react to that. I honestly kind of wonder if it was her intention. She probably wanted to kill the humans and get the souls, which, by the way, just quickly, I want to point out that Toriel suggests that, as many people have pointed out, a flaw. So Toriel suggests that Asgore could simply have taken one human soul from the first child who fell down, gone to the human world, collected 6 more souls, and then broken the barrier, which she uses to point out that Asgore, is scared of this war that he said he was going to start. People have said, though, that would have required killing 6 more humans, and blah, blah, blah. No, it wouldn't have. Remember, human souls in this world are permanent. They're not like monster souls where they break after a few seconds. Human souls don't break. They just fly around forever. So if you got one human soul in the underground and your monster passed through the barrier, you could simply grab human souls from a graveyard or even just like a hospital or just going around. You wouldn't have to kill people effectively. So actually, Asgore doing that plan would have spared more children. I mean, he would have caused a war with humanity anyway. But like, you know what I'm saying. Basically, point is, I just wanted to get that misconception out that Toriel was not advocating he go and kill 6 people. She was advocating that he, get the human souls just from like being, the human souls that are just around. And that's honestly what Kara and Azrael could have done. Maybe that's what they were heading out to do, but failed because they got attacked. But hard to say. Anyway, she probably wanted to kill the humans to get their souls, or maybe she didn't. Maybe she wanted to, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe she did want to free monsters, but the fact that Azrael says, if you go back and see him after the pacifist route, he says directly, Kara was not a good person. I see that now, or whatever name you've input. Um, does I think that speaks volumes actually about the type of person that Kara is. So it probably was some evil intention, whether it was to kill the humans. Uh, I mean, he even says like she didn't go to the mountain for a happy reason. So yeah, I mean, I guess that would make sense. That she'd want revenge. She'd take over as she'd use Azrael to do that. Yeah, sure. Takara, not necessarily a great person, but also doesn't seem like she would have. Like, I don't think she would have wanted Azrael and Toriel to be divorced. I don't think she wanted sadness for all the monsters. Right. Like, she wasn't a great person, but I don't think she wanted to hurt the monsters. And plus, it is your determination, your actions, every stat you increase in the genocide route that brings her to life, right? Well, her. I mean, the determination demon that you meet at the end of the genocide route is more of like a Kara, like, it's kind of like, it is to Kara as Flowey is to Azrael. Like, technically it is their consciousness, but it has no soul. Which is interesting, because human souls should be indestructible, so where exactly the hell did they go? Unclear, but, well, actually, I do have an answer to that, but we'll get to it. Yeah, okay, so in that case, Zakara's evil and would want to destroy the entire timeline, and you take away the soul and the consciousness, it does make sense. Conscience, it does make sense. But they aren't responsible for the genocide route. That's not even necessarily the bad ending of the pacifist route. That could be them, because by this point they're soulless, and we know Flowey wanted to like kill everyone, destroy the timeline, create eternal pain and torment. But even then, Flowey only wanted to do that after he lived through every timeline. Then, Kara, I guess, if Kara wasn't a bad person, her version of Flowey would be significantly worse. So, I guess it's not necessarily a surprise. But Frisk is clearly the one at fault for the genocide route. I know a lot of people like to include the main character. I probably should have said this at the beginning. I don't like the idea of the player being a character in Undertale. Just doesn't sit right. And also, Frisk's actions don't line up. Because, like, Frisk may be a stand in for the character, right? For the player. But ultimately, like, Frisk expresses happiness whenever they get a monster encounter in Genocide, which I don't necessarily feel is true. Like, a player doesn't necessarily. Like, most players only ever do Genocide because they want to. A few people, obviously, like, to find Genocide would have had to have just tried it out, but. Yeah, a lot of people only do it because it's the secret route, because it's one of the famous routes that gets all their lore and stuff, but, like, they wouldn't necessarily just think to do it, and most people, even if they did do it, wouldn't kill the monsters after pacifist. And that's all Frisk, right? I mean, I guess technically the red eyes would link to Kara more. So maybe at that point you're possessed by Kara. Unclear. But even like you do 3 genocide routes, Kara's like, whoa. So it seems like, actually no, Kara can't be the one killing everyone after pacifist because Kara sees you do three pacifist routes or three genocide routes, and it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Which again, most people would only do for the Easter egg of that, but like, so Frisk type, I don't like that's from a video game perspective. If you were actually there doing it, the players wouldn't be like that. So most people would like want to see what happens in the genocide route, right? But they'd still want the pacifist route to be happy. And if Kara is, I mean, Kara is just straight up, right? Like Kara would not kill everyone in pacifist because Kara says like, "What's wrong with you?" So it seems unlikely that it would then commit genocide in pacifist, which means you have to be the one doing that. Well, not you, because you, the player, wouldn't, right? You'd want pacifist to. You'd probably be like, okay, I've experienced genocide, but I like these characters, I want them to have a happy ending. Frisk would have to be the one killing them, not you, the player. Even if you're a character in this world, it's Frisk who does it. Frisk is the one who expresses joy, and remove the player, which feels reasonable, because like there are some meta jokes, but I wouldn't go ahead and say like the game is definitely just canonically a game in universe. I guess it kind of is in Deltarune because you see like Azrael's OC, but definitely like you the like in Undertale's world, like you the player don't exist. You the player represented by Frisk, but Frisk is like evil. And that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, why else would you be able to restart the game? I mean, obviously because it's a game, but like in universe, to do that would have to mean that Frisk does that. And again, Frisk would have to be the one killing people in pacifist because you, the player, don't get that choice, which means you, the player, can't be held responsible, even if you, the player, are a character in this universe. So Frisk might just be a lot more evil than we think. Undertale Labs did a theory that maybe Frisk could be a monster kid who found Kara's soul, and that's why the souls are the same color. That's why we have the same kind of like yellow color as Monster Kid. But it seems unlikely because you would still be able to use magic. And sure, I guess a monster with a human soul could look like anything they wanted, but like it. Also, the idea of a Monster Kid being there would, yeah, it just wouldn't. It just wouldn't. Sure, many people do kind of actually mistake you for a monster throughout the game, but it just, yeah, it just wouldn't. It I don't know. I feel like the soul would I mean, I guess you awake the determination demon. The evidence for that isn't, like, bad. I just don't believe it. Because, well, because you've fallen down into the underground, right? So, you would kind of, yeah, no, you would have had to have fallen down. Well, I guess you have Kara's memories. So, that would be interesting. Because human souls persist. This was not the way this theory was supposed to go. I was going to say Kara's soul is in the core because there's the red heart. Again, another one from Undertale Labs. The red heart in the core feels like human souls have enough energy to permanently make power. And to me, that feels timeline wise, it would be it. Yeah, that would make sense. And again, human souls don't get destroyed, so where the hell did it go? No, because I guess okay, no, we can prove that Frisk has to have that soul because if the soul was just lying around, Flowey would have found it and then could have used that to get the other souls, and then would have had all seven souls and could have enacted his goal. Right, Flowey with already having magic with a human soul would definitely be able to. Okay, yeah, no, because Kara's soul would then have to have been stored somewhere where Flowey couldn't get it, and the only place I imagine that is the core, because even if Flowey did try and get the soul, there are the amalgamations, and he doesn't necessarily know where they are. Okay, cool. So yeah, soul being in the core, I believe that. Also, I should point out that Kara's name, technically speaking, but one should be Kara, but I like Kara more. And two, like the true name may not be a lore thing so much as like it's a joke, because I believe the like variable that the name that the player puts in is called Kara. So if you put in, or maybe just character. So if you put in Kara, it's like, oh yeah, that's the same as calling a dog dog. It's like, yeah, it is the true name, but may not necessarily have like a serious lore implication. But for the sake of it, we'll call her Kara because that's what everyone knows her by. So easy. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess that's is that all the small stuff I wanted to go over. That's the small stuff. Almost 40 minutes. That's just the small stuff. We got the big boys to go yet. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think that's all the smaller things I would have wanted to go over. I mean, they're all kind of like small technicalities and cool little fun ideas, but I don't necessarily want to go over like every small cool thing. Let's just talk about the fun. Well, first off, let's talk about Papyrus, because he is not as weak as people would have you believe. I mean, this is something that the fandom, I feel, has been realizing more in recent years. Papyrus is not weak, okay? First off, Papyrus is the only monster. First off, Papyrus does show the ability to heal you, something that only a few monsters show. Toriel is the other one, I believe, the main one. She heals you, but like consider that you get knocked out by Papyrus at 1 HP, and then you wake up with full health in his garage. How did that happen? Because he healed you. Clearly, I mean it wouldn't really make sense. Which clearly proves that Papyrus has healing magic. So immediately, boom, impressive. But two, consider the things he does during his battle. Like, he can affect your soul color, something that only a few monsters can do. He can make complicated words out of his bones. He can have bones that like change sizes as the battle goes. He can he genuinely is quite impressive, and he describes most of that as a warm up, and even says his special attack would have blasted you, which implies that his special attack is a Gaster blaster. I should also point out that technically speaking, the annoying dog. I believe the annoying dog only ever appears in attacks, and then when he steals the artifact from you and leaves the dog residue in dog style, which itself seems magical because it can create more magic, which we'll get to. So Papyrus, in his battle, the annoying dog comes in and steals his special attack, which is just represented by a bone. That doesn't make sense. First off, the annoying dog, as part of his attack, should be a generation of his own magic, right? So he's the one creating the annoying dog. He's the one stopping his own move, which I think is interesting. But also, he's been holding back against you the whole battle. It's a warm up to him. And also, the biggest piece of evidence, he can hit you with an attack on 1 HP and knock you out, but not kill you. Which is an incredible level of control that even Toriel, a literal boss monster, doesn't have. Toriel can't do that. In her attack, she has to make her magic avoid you so as to not kill you. But she can still kill you if you manage to, if you pull, I think it was Jacksepticeye, and somehow still manage to get hit even when the attack is literally avoiding you. And, she'll be shocked, but, Papyrus can just control his damage output so that he can't kill you. Which is an incredibly impressive level of magic. The fact you can hit someone with an attack on 1 HP, we know you can go to, decimal point HPs because of, but in your battle with Azrael, when you go to decimal point HP, that's more of your determination holding on, and also, you don't get knocked out. Papyrus is the only person who can hit you on 1 HP, not kill you, and, knock you out. That's an incredibly impressive control of his magic, an incredibly impressive ability that we've never seen before. Then throw in things like his healing magic, his blue attacks, the fact he can change your soul color, and the fact that his special attack has Gaster blasters, and the fact that he considers the whole thing a warm-up. And also, another thing that I saw in a Tumblr post, well, this was a video of someone reading out the Tumblr post, they pointed out that the more a monster is trying against you, the more they're moving. So, for example, Asgore doesn't move that much because he's holding back against you. Toriel doesn't move that much because she doesn't want to hurt you. But then, someone say, Undyne, who is really trying to kill you, moves a lot, right? And, Undyne the Undying, the more someone moves, the more they're trying to kill you. Papyrus is perfectly still, which means he's, really holding back against you. And if Papyrus was going all out, like, Jesus. Effectively, Papyrus is probably more powerful than Sans. The only thing, right, reminder, the only thing that makes Sans powerful is that he has Karmic Retribution, which probably isn't even his power. If I had to guess, I would say Karmic Retribution is the power of the Judgment Hall, and that's why Sans can't fight or stop you earlier. For as much as he can make himself appear threatening, he really isn't that powerful. His main power is that he can dodge, but maybe it's the Judgment Hall that gives him Karmic Retribution and allows him to avoid iframes. That, to me, feels like it makes more sense as to why he wouldn't step in earlier. Even when you're doing multiple genocide routes in a row, even when you kill Papyrus. Like, you cannot tell me he wouldn't step in and protect Papyrus if he couldn't. So, that's just that. Like, you cannot convince me if he could step in and defend Papyrus that he wouldn't. So, yeah. Effectively, Papyrus is a lot more powerful than he seems. Sans is a lot weaker than he seems. There you go. Also, I think that Gerson was the previous person in the Judgment Hall. This is just a quick side theory, but I think Gerson was he was literally the Hammer of Justice. He must have been the person in the Judgment Hall before Sans, and then we know he's like retired and in his shop by now, so it kind of just feels like he gave the Judgment Hall to Sans, maybe in order to make up for his lack of power. He'd probably have known Gaster as he was the royal scientist, so makes sense to me. Oh, yeah, I mean that. Yeah, there you go. Maybe he was also head of the Royal Guard, and at one point that was the same job, and then it separated out into two different jobs. But I do think, as the Hammer of Justice, he kind of had to have been in the Judgment Hall, you know? And then Karmic Retribution, which again, probably something that Sans would know. Or probably something that Sans would have because of the Judgment Hall. And maybe even the fact that Sans can affect iframes and Gerson knows how to abuse the, shop mechanic of the game to not be hurt. That's pretty cool. Connection between them. Oh, and also Papyrus definitely knows about the timelines. I mean, Sans is like our reading show. There's the whole "What do you two think?" and log 17, I believe it is, with the Gaster log with the WD wingdings. Oh, and also just at one point you can get a line of dialogue. I think it's like after you get into Sans's bedroom, you just get a line of dialogue from Papyrus. It's just like, Sans, is Sans pranking you across time and space again? I hate it when he does that. Which, just proves that he's aware of the timelines. And also time and space is interesting. Maybe could imply he can teleport. So, yeah. Cool. Now, on to the big show. The theory that I've had for a while. Theory that, honestly, is the only reason I really made this video. I just wanted to explain some of the other stuff, because I thought it was cool. I think I've worked out another member of Papyrus and Sans's family. In fact, I dare say I've worked out two. Let's start with the easier one, and the one who requires a lot less evidence, / has a lot less evidence. Their mum, probably. Okay, so in the True Lab, there's obviously the amalgamations, and one of them appears twice. The spoon, we'll call it. It appears in the shower where it's wibbling, wobbling side to side, and then when you walk up to it, you open the curtain, it vanishes. Right? We all know that. That's where you get the key. Obviously, and there's the other time where if you lie in the bed, probably the same amalgamation, it fades in, brings out its hand, tucks you in, it goes. It's the only amalgamation that isn't aggressive to you, doesn't harm you, which, remember, Sans and Papyrus are like some of the only monsters that, like, Sans isn't aggressive to you, unless you're in genocide. And Papyrus literally has controls his magic against you so well that he cannot kill you, and if you fail 3 times, he just feels so bad for you, he lets you go by anyway. Again, back to him being the most powerful, but also, again, Sans and Papyrus, no harm to you. The fact it tucks you in feels very parent-like, and Gaster is probably their dad, probably, most likely. So, there's that. Which would kind of leave, process of elimination, it to be their mum. But why? Why would this really be their mum? What evidence do I have? Well, 1, it's humanoid. Skeletons are humanoid. 2, it doesn't seem to be fused with anything. We know that family members of monsters we've already seen are there. 3, oh, that was 3. The fact that family members of monsters we know there. 4, Sans And like even after like the true lab has been revealed, like if you walk back to Asriel, you'll see like the monsters hanging out with their amalgamation families, all happy, all to be. We don't see the spoon anywhere, and also anywhere, and also Sans and Alphys are still keeping quiet about their relation. Why? I can understand if they were trying to keep the true lab secret, but they've revealed the true lab. Why do they need to be embarrassed about the fact they know each other? What are they hiding? Well, if Sans had taken Papyrus and his fallen down mother there to get injected with determination to help break the barrier, first off, that's just something that, like, Papyrus alone might not be happy with. So Sans might need to keep that a secret. And then if their mother turned into an amalgamation, yeah, that's definitely the type of thing Sans would want to keep secret, and might explain why they're so awkward. Hell, maybe they got in an argument and just left on bad terms, and so they're just awkward with each other because they're actually just awkward. Because they left on, poor terms, which, if you saw your family member turn into a melty abomination, yeah, that might just lead to you, having a bit of an argument, breaking it off with the person who was technically responsible, even if she didn't, know. She thought she was creating souls to break the barrier. She had no way of knowing this would happen. If you're wondering why she wouldn't have to fuse with anyone else when all the other amalgamations, except the memory heads, which are their own kind of weird thing that might have connections to Gaster, might not, why would she not have to fuse with anyone? My assumption is that skeletons just seem to be able to hold more determination. Maybe their family are boss monsters, which we'll get into with Grandpa Sammy, but maybe not. And they might just have more determination because skeletons have connections to humans. We don't know. Consider the fact that Sans can seemingly generate blood. It could be fake blood, but like maybe it's something to do with bone marrow. Maybe it's something to do with determination. Both Papyrus and Sans are able to hold off after being killed. Most monsters turn to dust immediately. But, except, I believe it is. I mean, Asgore does, but, like, Toriel holds on, but she's determined. Undyne holds on, but she's determined. Metatron's a robot, so it's kind of, you know. It's technically a physical body possessed by a ghost, so. But so the idea that he holds on is not surprising either, but, like, the Skeller brothers both hold on. Sans holds on, goes off screen, and then we hear him turn to dust. And Papyrus holds on, then his body breaks, but his head still manages to hold on, which is very impressive. And then he turns to dust. But still, he is able to hold on, which could represent that the Skeleton brothers hold more determination. But we don't know for sure. We also know that Gaster is the one who created the blueprint of the determination extractor. First off, it just looks like a Gaster blaster. Second off, we know that Alphys didn't create the blueprints, but that she followed the blueprint. She's the one who built it, as Gaster is the one who created the blueprints. Which again, Sans having a connection to all that wouldn't really be surprising, considering the drawing of three people. And with the words "don't forget," definitely seems like that would tie on to Gaster in some way. Sans' reference to the timelines and all that. Yeah. Also, the big piece of evidence that the spoon is their mum is that it can teleport. I mean, again, you open the curtain and it vanishes. It fades in when you're in the bed to tuck you in. So not only is it not aggressive to you, which lines up with the Skeleton Brothers, may or may not be able to hold more determination, and is humanoid, which lines up with the Skeleton Brothers, and it can teleport, which lines up with Sans. Yeah, I'm willing to call this one. That's their mum. Now let's talk about their grandpa, Grandpa Semi. He's only mentioned in one file, which apparently I've heard is in the game, and it's to do with Temmie, but that's from a YouTube comment, so I don't know how true that is. Otherwise, Grandpa Semi is just something that's not in the game, but is mentioned. Semi, obviously a font, semi-serif, sans serif, probably a font. So people assumed it would be a family member of the Skeleton Brothers. Which, Grandpa would make sense. What if I told you he's still in the game, though? And not just in an audio file to do with Temmie. What if I told you that Grandpa Semi was in the game? And that we meet him. And that we talk to him. And that he's one of the most useful characters. River person. First off, River Person knows about Gaster. Beware the man from the other world, beware the man who speaks in hands. He knows about Flowey. He says at one point, humans, monsters, flowers. As far as we know, the only person who knows about Flowey is Sans, who only knows about it. Well, the only two people is Sans and Papyrus. Sans only knows about it because Papyrus told him. Papyrus knows Flowery, as he calls him, and told Sans, and even Sans doesn't really fully believe him. So, for River Person to know about Flowey and Gaster, already massive connections. Remember the connections that Papyrus has to Annoying Dog, the Dog Shrine, the magical Annoying Dog that stops his move that's probably a representation of Papyrus in some way, shape, or form, stopping his own special move, or maybe making up an excuse to stop his special move so he doesn't, actually kill you. Yeah, remember all those connections that the Skeleton Brothers, especially Papyrus, have to the Annoying Dog? Well, so does River Person. When he has the special Annoying Dog version of his boat that rises up out of the water and then runs. So already, River Person connected to Gaster, connected to Flowey, which both obviously connect to the Skeleton Brothers, and then also connected to the Annoying Dog, which again connected to the Skeleton Brothers. Next up, there's his power set. One, remember his boat can fly, it can't fly, but rises out of the water and stands on the water, which is basically flying. Yeah, Papyrus manages to do the same thing after his battle. He flies off. So again, defying gravity, there it is. Another thing, River Person always heads the same direction, always takes the same amount of time. Think about it. When River Person could be heading from Hotland to Snowdon, right? And he'll head left, and it will take him one room, and then he'll appear there, where he speaks to you, and then he'll appear there. He can be going to Waterfall, and he'll go left, and appear in one room. Wait, why did it take him the same amount of rooms to get to Waterfall? And you see how it takes him the same amount of time, same amount of rooms to get to Waterfall and Snowdon. But the biggest evidence is that when you go from Snowdon to Hotland, or even Waterfall to Hotland, he still heads left and ends up there anyway. And again, takes him the same amount of time as it normally would. So why? Well, Sans regularly walks off screen in the wrong direction and can appear and pop up everywhere, right? Very commonly known power of Sans, he can teleport. There's even one room where if you walk to the side and back, you can he'll just be off screen, he'll appear on the other side of the screen. Because you can never have those two places in your view at the same time. So again, Sans regularly takes the shortcuts, right? He regularly walks off in other directions. The fact that River Person can go the same direction and always take the same amount of time to get to places, no matter the distance. Yeah, that's pretty teleporting, pretty shortcut of him, pretty Sans of him, honestly. So he's got seemingly the same power set as Sans and Papyrus. He's seemingly got connections to the Annoying Dog, Flowey, and Gaster, like Sans and Papyrus. Oh, and also he's a River Person in an underground world, which, on a boat, wooden boat, that could maybe be a reference to Ra in Egyptian mythology, who would go through the underworld, who would travel across the lake. Basically, when the sun set, he'd go to the underworld, and he'd take up souls, lost dead souls, and bring them to the afterlife. On his wooden boat. Also, he gave a cat 9 lives, and the connections to the Skeller brothers and cats are also quite substantial, considering Mad, Mad Mew Mew. That's it. Yeah, Mad Mew Mew living in Papyrus and Sans' house and being a cat. Already, again, links there. Also, Gaster probably being a cat. Just quickly, this is quick, just to link it to Gaster even more. One of his followers, the G followers, says he's holding a piece of Gaster with him. Now, we assume that piece of Gaster is the head in the hand of the cat person, but actually, if you look at it, when it's talking, the piece that moves is the mouth, is the head that's being held, which means that the head is the one who's speaking to you, which means the piece of Gaster is actually the cat, which means the Gaster was probably a skeleton cat. Because of, the mystery person who we all kind of assume is Gaster because of his grey, his connections to fun values. There are other parts and pieces of Gaster, like the weird, tank thing. But point is, the tree follower, who says he's holding a piece of Gaster, is the head, and the piece of Gaster is a cat, so Gaster is at least part cat. And would probably be Grandpa Semi's son, so the connection between Grandpa Semi, Ra, cats, afterlife, underworld, underground. Yeah, a lot of connections there. And before you tell me that it's, insane to bring in Egyptian mythology all of a sudden, one, it isn't, but two, what shape are the souls in Undertale? Right, hearts, you know? Right, and in Egyptian mythology, what's the body part that represents a soul? Oh wait, a heart. So already, connections to Egyptian mythology exist in this world. So the idea that this guy could be a reference to Ra is not that absurd. And then you would have someone with connections to death and the afterlife who's wearing a cloak to hide his body. Someone who, in some way, shape, or form, is connected to death, who hides his body in a cloak. Well, the Grim Reaper. And of course, he's a skeleton in a cloak. I'm not necessarily saying that their grandpa is literally the Grim Reaper, or even the reference for the Grim Reaper. Maybe it could mean it's been around since the Human Monster War, but not necessarily. But it could mean that the River Person, but again, River Person being a skeleton in a cloak would make sense. That's why he hides himself under the cloak. Obviously, he doesn't talk in a font, which is the biggest piece of evidence against this theory. But we don't know that monsters have to speak in fonts. For example, Sans, during his battle, actually creates Zs that are not in Comic Sans, but are in fact in the font Aster, which, yes, Gaster's name has another font in it, Aster. That's the font that he uses when he's going in his boss battle when he's asleep. And, yeah, Not only does that connect him to Gaster even more than Gaster blasters and all that, but also means that skeletons seemingly can speak in other fonts, which means the idea that, one, we don't necessarily know. It doesn't have to be Grandpa Semi, he could just be related to the Skeleton Brothers, and his font could be the font for the game. Or maybe skeletons can learn to speak without their font if they want to, and they simply choose not to. But we don't know for sure. Which also is a weird amount of kind of reality manipulation. Anyway, that's the big theory. But now let's talk about the human souls. Because it seems like there's magic associated with soul colours and souls and all that. So let's get into it. Obviously, we know what all the souls represent. Light blue represents patience, orange represents bravery, dark blue represents integrity, purple represents perseverance, which perseverance is a synonym for determination, so that's kind of really annoying, actually, but whatever. Yellow is for justice, and then... what's the one I'm missing? And then green is for kindness. Which, two of those are in the wrong correct order. It's actually green comes first, then it's yellow. But anyway, let's talk about their lives and how they died. Because, why can't they respawn, right? We'll work out what red represents in a bit, but why can't they respawn? Well, I would assume it's because of their containers, right? The fact that Flowey can manipulate timelines would imply that and you would represent that there's probably more. Would represent that those souls' determination can't be affecting, because we know you can't seemingly affect timelines if someone else has more determination than you. And again, perseverance is a synonym for determination. But I would assume that the casings that the souls are held in are probably more for the sake of stopping the souls being able to reset. They're probably some kind of containment. So that would be my assumption there. So all we would need to explain is why the souls got in the containment and didn't reset immediately. The first two are easy. Patience probably died because in the ruins they were wandering around and they were too patient. Muffet might have existed in the ruins at some point before moving, or it could have been another member of Muppet species, another spider monster, or really just a frogget. Honestly, they were probably so patient that they just didn't fight back, didn't take action, and just kind of let themselves be killed. And so, oh, and I guess the girly would probably indicate that they're female, so we can just say she, I guess. She probably died because she was too patient. But then she probably got caught and taken to Asgore because, again, she would patiently wait. The monsters would say, oh, we just need to take you somewhere, and she's patient, she'd be willing to wait, and then she'd get put in a container. Womp womp. Bravery is actually interesting, and we'll... Okay, remember how I said that, like, Papyrus's magic, like, the annoying dog is a creation of Papyrus's magic and would have been stopping him using his special move? Yeah, that's when this comes back, because my theory is Papyrus killed the Bravery Soul, not intentionally. I suspect that him and the Bravery Soul were friends. The Bravery Soul is, a lot of people assume it was, assuming they didn't just go to Asgore and their stuff didn't just get spread around the entire underground. Then a lot of people kind of assume that Bravery was killed by Sans or maybe Gaster if he was around, but Undertale Labs did. But I don't think so. Again, Sans isn't that powerful without karmic retribution, and we don't know that Brave. And even then, karmic retribution only seems to activate on genocide. So I maintain that karmic retribution only works inside the Judgment Hall and is not actually part of Sans's magic and is instead part of the power of the Judgment Hall. But whatever. I suspect that Bravery and Papyrus, again, we know he's powerful. I suspect that him and Bravery, befriended each other. And there is actually evidence for this, by the way. They befriended each other. Papyrus. And here's the thing: Bravery would be willing to run into attacks head first, so that would explain why then Papyrus's blue attacks would be like its perfect counter. So Papyrus is showing off its moves, and he's brave, he's manly, he's willing to go, oh yeah, I'll take it on directly. And then, he's willing to go through, and Papyrus is having fun, showing off his magic. He's like, are you okay? You okay? You good? And then Bravery Soul, despite in fact not being okay and good, is like, yeah, I'm good, throw another attack at me. And then he died. Womp womp. And then, because Bravery is brave, it wouldn't reset. Because it would bravely face death, The evidence for this is more just kind of, again, all the weird stuff with Papyrus, like his own magic seems to stop him using his special move, which I suspect is the opposite of Sans's. If Sans is nothing, Papyrus is probably everything. Big special move. He's not wrong, we would have been blasted to oblivion. But also, why can Papyrus not kill us? Obviously it's because of his good nature, but again, even Toriel, who has seen multiple humans, and even she can't knock you out. So why can Papyrus? She could have just knocked you out, destroyed the, exit to the ruins, and that would have been that. You wouldn't have been able to go forward, you wouldn't have been able to put yourself in harm's way, that would have been that. But she couldn't. Why can Papyrus? My guess is it's his endless guilt. I don't even think he remembers. I think it's like a Shigaraki situation where the memory was so traumatic he forgot it. And so he forgot that he killed the Bravery Soul. And then, but the trauma still is with him, and it limits his magic. That's why he can only use his warm-up moves against you. That's why he can knock you out. On one hand, it represents an incredible control of his magic. On the other hand, it's kind of a limitation for someone who wants to be in the Royal Guard, and, But I think that maybe that would even explain his kind of aloof personality, the fact that he's kind of gullible and isn't always there, despite actually being a rather intelligent and knowledgeable individual. He just can't bring himself to relive that opportunity. It's his coping mechanism, even. Also, there's a big connection here because, if I remember, Papyrus has, there's a line where, Papyrus on his, internet account has, an animated picture of him with super buff arms and even, sunglasses with super buff arms edited on. And that connects to the description of the manly bandana that describes it as a bandana with a bunch of super buff arms on. So the connection between him and Bravery is right there. And again, Bravery obviously would bravely face death and then get put in a container. So that's the easy two. Integrity is hard because she, presumably, I guess a tutu. I don't. I think even male ballerinas don't wear tutus, so probably she. She would probably have. She's killed early in Waterfall. I don't know if it was Undyne or Gerson, because it could have been either of them. I guess it could have also been Mad Dummy, but that doesn't really seem likely. But Mad Dummy at the time, Mad Mew Mew now. Just to make it clear. But I lean more towards. I I guess I lean more towards Undyne for reasons we'll get to later. But yeah, no, I guess it would be Undyne because we don't see Gerson until much later on, like past Undyne's house, and we don't know how long Undyne has. But I guess Undyne doesn't know human determination. Then we also know that monsters aren't good at recognizing humans, so it's possible that maybe this was a. Again, hard to say who killed Integrity. It's not like they would have had a weak point where they would have been able to be killed easily, so it feels like they would have had to have been killed by someone powerful. Gerson or Undyne. It's one of them. I lean more towards Gerson. Um, I lean more towards Gerson. And then Integrity wouldn't respawn because it would be, it would be, they have integrity, okay? They lost that fight. They're not going to respawn. That would be shameful. That would just be unfair to their opponent. So they get put in the cage, womp womp. And then Perseverance is nice and easy. Definitely Gerson. He's literally selling their stuff. Um. So yeah. Why Perseverance wouldn't respawn is twofold. One, Perseverance could maybe persevere in the face of death. The dying won't stop them as less of a respawning and more of a like, I'll continue on as a soul. Or maybe Perseverance is kind of like Undying the Undying, but better, where like maybe it creates a whole new timeline. So there's one timeline where it's dead and captured, and another timeline where they live. Sans does say that timelines are jumping left and right, and that doesn't really make sense. Like our character is stopping and starting timelines, but we've only got the one. We can't make them jump left and right. Maybe timelines jumping could mean Perseverance because they literally have a trait that is synonymous with determination, that they can like make multiple timelines and affect multiple timelines. Maybe the other option is the Perseverance we know suffered from depression. Now it takes a lot of perseverance to deal with depression, obviously, to go on every single day. So maybe that's where the Perseverance was going, and maybe just eventually they gave up, or again, or they just lived, right? Or they decided they would persevere in face of being nothing